I found a Dixie Campaigner nightstand set. I love campaign furniture. These were hot pink. I found them for $80. The Facebook description, she explained how she had started the process of repainting them, had to Bondo them, they were not in good condition, and she gave up, and so she just sold them. So I thought, well, maybe I could refinish them, but after getting home and seeing all the damage on them, you can tell there's some water damage on them, and so they can go for a lot, especially as a pair if they were refinished to wood, but I don't think this pair is a refinishing candidate. So my goal is to get them repaired. I'm missing a drawer slide. I'm missing a few of the campaign accents. So I've got to source those on eBay. They can be anywhere from $10 to $15 a piece. So I'm going to look and see if I can find those and get it cleaned up, and then just kind of peek underneath the surface and see if I can find any good wood or not. And then if not, I'll just fix the water damage that I have, paint it a fabulous color, and call it a day. So let's go.
Here's a few more close-ups of the condition. Obviously, she really tried. I think she used some type of a Sherwin-Williams industrial type of paint. I think she's going for a high gloss, but the substrate has to be pretty perfect to be able to do high gloss. And you can see there's water damage along the back, and there was also some along the sides. So it was not in good condition to try a really high-end paint job. And so I think that's why she probably got pretty frustrated. So not only is there water damage, but I do have a little bit of veneer damage here and there. I am missing some hardware as well. I'm missing some of the T-bars, and I'm trying to decide, do I keep them? Do I source them, or do I just cover the holes and fill them in? I'm not sure. So you can see along the bottom there, I just have a lot of areas that are going to need to be fixed. You can see even along the sides, if they had just taped that off, it would have prevented so much overspray. So it's going to be a lot of acetone trying to get all of this off the best I can. But we're going to dive in, and I'm going to at least take a peek and see what's underneath the surface. I'm using Smart Strip Advance. This is by Dumond, and I'm just trying to see what's under this paint. Is there any beautiful wood? I did one coat of the stripper, scraped it back with my carbide scraper, and not only the top layer really came off, so I tried again, did another layer. I was starting to get a little bit of wood, and then I was like, oh, this isn't good. She said, oh, it weren't good, and she was right.
So I think I'm just going to pretend that I didn't try to strip the top. It's so bad. And so, you know what? I have stripped a lot of furniture, and I'm not going to do it. These are the times I have to remind myself, Lisa, 12 million tons of furniture are thrown away every year. And so if I can repaint something and keep it from a landfill, that's a good thing. And so I'm not going to try to strip them, and I'm just going to clean them up, fix them, and give them a fabulous paint job. Let's do it.
So I'm going to pivot and do a fabulous paint job. I'll start by making sure I take all of the hardware off, and I'll get that polished up. Now, I am hopeful maybe someday somebody will want to refinish this. So instead of using Bondo, I am going to fill in all of the imperfections with wood filler. I have a lot of areas that need to be glued, so much loose veneer. So I'm just going to have to go around with my wood glue and my syringes and my clamps and just clamp it up the best I can. Now I'm going to give everything a really good sand. I'll have to sand a little bit more aggressively on the top since I did try to strip those, because I want to get a really smooth surface for when I go to prime and paint. You can see I have so much overspray on the inside, so I'll try to get some of that off with acetone, but some of this stuff, there's only so much you can do. And so I'll sand it smooth, and I'll probably just prime and paint over those areas just to try to kind of mask them. I'm going to use acetone along the sides to try to get off some of the paint that's on the dovetails. So I'll be painting part of that, but I don't like it on the dovetails. So I'm using acetone with just a paper towel, and then I'll go in with a wire scraper, and then I'll come back with a sandpaper, and again, just try to get as much off as possible. Maker's Mark is in the middle, and it's probably just inked on there. So I'm going to make sure I don't use any acetone on that, or it would take it right off. So I'm going to sand around it. There is some overspray on it, but you know what? I'm just going to take my pictures because I'll probably put a drawer liner over it anyway, because these drawers are in pretty rough shape. In order to prep my drawers for spray, I'm going to make sure I tape off those dovetail areas. And I use my 5-in-1 tool to just trim off that tape. I make sure I use a little bit on the hardware hole so the overspray doesn't get into the drawer. To wrap the drawer, I'm going to put some painter's tape along that front edge, and then I'm going to take some aluminum foil, place it on that tape, and then wrap it around the drawer. I like to put them back to back when I'm painting so that it can prevent overspray. In hindsight, I did get a little bit of overspray on one of the drawers, so I probably should have just wrapped the aluminum all the way around, but you can see I kind of butt them up against each other, and it really does help prevent overspray. I'm using Ben Shellac primer on this. I just went ahead and grabbed a rattle can. It's just so much easier. So it's such an intense color. I want to make sure that I really get that covered up really well. After that dried, I gave it a scuff sand, and then I did some fill with some glazing Bondo, and then I'm going to do a second coat of primer. After that is dry, I'll do another light scuff sand, and then I'll be ready to paint. For the paint, I'm using Benjamin Moore Command Paint. I like to add a little bit of Floetrol to it just to kind of slow down the drying time because it dries so fast that sometimes it can give you a little bit of texture in your paint. So the Floetrol just kind of helps everything lay down smoothly. I'm using my Elegance 5700 by Wagner. This is an all-metal gun. It provides a really beautiful finish. The color is Dead Salmon by Farrow Ball. They kind of describe it as an aged salmon pink. I would consider it kind of like a muddy, taupey pink. Sometimes it doesn't even look pink. Sometimes it depends on the lighting in the room. Sometimes it just looks like a tan color. I would say it's a very nuanced color. It depends on the time of day. It kind of changes with the sun. I'll lay down one coat, do a scuff sand with a high grit, tack that off, and then come back and do a second coat. To clean my hardware, I like to boil some water and I add some distilled vinegar to it, and then I allow that hardware to soak. I had some variation on one of the tops that I wasn't super pleased with, so I added some more glazing Bondo. I'll reprime it and then I'll go ahead and repaint it again. Now it's time to replace that drawer guide. So I removed the existing one that was there in the drawer itself, and I was missing the one on the back of the drawer. So I ordered a wooden one that was the same size as the existing one. And I'm going to use the same holes and see if it matches up. Obviously it doesn't because it's totally different, but I thought that's a starting point. So I'll just go ahead and screw it in where it was before and try to fit it and see if it'll work. I had to drill new pilot holes and then I re-screwed it in just a little bit over to make it straight. For the back of the drawer, you can see it's a little bit too long, so I'm going to use my multi-tool by Dremel to trim out the area at the back, and then I'll use my miter saw to actually cut the piece itself. So I'm just going to tape it down. I should have had duct tape, but I couldn't find it. So I'm just using some packaging tape. I'm just trying to look inside to see if it's level. Is it meeting up with the drawer guide? And as you can see, I'm on the ground. It's not matching up. So I need to move the whole thing over just a little bit, and I think that will help. It was going in, but I still had a little bit of problem. So I pulled it out and I noticed there's a little bit of the notch that I didn't have fully out. So I'm going to go ahead and take that off with my multi-tool, and we'll dry fit it again and see if that will help it go in. So this time it went in, but it didn't go all the way in. And so there are some drawer stops at the back of the drawer. So I'm going to take those out because I don't think that's allowing it to go all the way back. So again, this was configured for a different type of drawer slide. So I'm going to take those off, see if that will help, and we'll go from there. It was a little bit hard to get out because I didn't have it screwed down in the back. So once I had everything adhered and then the guide screwed down in the back, it was easily able to go in and out. I'm going to go ahead and reattach the drawer stops, but I'm going to put them a little bit further back so that it can go in a little bit further. Now I'm going to do a few little touch-ups along the side. You remember how much hot pink I had on the side of the drawers, but I just did the best that I could, and I am going to touch up a little bit with the Dead Salmon paint. After the hardware was soaking in the boiled water and vinegar, I'm going to give it a polish with Barkeeper's Friend and some very fine steel wool. It's 4/0. And I'm just going to try to polish it the best I can, see how I can get it. Unfortunately, when I was done with it, I noticed that the piece underneath the drawer pull was not even brass. So I'm going to have to go ahead and spray these anyway, just to make sure that they all match. So I always like to still give it a really good polish. You can see the before and after. It's always very remarkable what a little bit of polish can do. But like I said, that little plate underneath there is not brass. So I'm going to give these a really nice spray just with my favorite spray paint, and we'll get them all matching and looking good. The last step is my drawer liners. I like to start with my drawer away from me, and then I'm going to pull the paper across and trim it just to the other side of the drawer. Then I roll it up, put it against the front of the drawer, and I trim off that excess. This is kind of like a little pro tip because you don't want to have so much paper that you're working with, or it's just really hard to get into your drawer. Peel back all of the excess paper, then you're going to line your straight edge against the front of the drawer, and you're going to start smoothing it out with your hand. I use my fingers to just gently push it into the corners. Then I'm going to start with a Bondo spreader because it's nice and flexible and very soft, and I'm going to smooth out any wrinkles or any bubbles and start pushing it into the corners. After that, I'll move on to a wallpaper spreader. It's a little bit tougher. I'm going to really work it into the corners so that I'm ready to make my cuts. I like to use a fresh blade on my razor blade. I use my pinky as kind of a stabilizer, and I'm just going to simply bring it across the edge there and trim the excess. You can see it's really nice at the top where I have that straight line. So the way I do it, I only have to cut 3 sides. So let's look back at the before. This was a hot pink mess. I know where they were going with it, but man, this probably wasn't the best set to try this particular paint job on, because it was the substrate needed so much work, so much water damage, and just a lot of loose veneer. So anytime you're doing a paint job, paint's just going to cover over what's there. So you got to kind of make your repairs the best that you can before you put paint on it, because sometimes paint just accentuates the problems that you have under it. And so it doesn't really cover problems. It really sometimes just makes them look worse. So after a lot of repairs, a lot of fill, good prime and paint, here's the final product. What do you think? Do you like that color? I think it's really soft, obviously, because the color was so bold before. I think this fits a really modern home because it's very taupey, which is a very neutral, easy to live with color. I love those drawer liners. It needed it. They were in rough shape. If you'll notice, I decided not to put the extra T-bars on it. That would have been an extra probably $35, $40 for me. I had to replace one of them already. And so it would have been like $60. And these aren't really high-priced pieces. So I'm not going to be able to really get a great return on my investment on these. So sometimes it's just an economic decision. Those can be ordered by the buyer if they want to add those on. But for me, I decided they look good with just the 4 corners, and I have the original hardware. Now, the original hardware wasn't in great shape. It's a little pitted, but I did try to spray it, and I think it looks good for the condition that it started out in. So these were rough. These were really, really rough, but I think the extra fill, quality paint, I made them the best I could. So enjoy some of these videos, and we'll come back at the end. In the comments, and thanks so much for watching.